The emergency council chamber of the Galactic Concordat hadn't seen such attendance in centuries. Representatives from 17 species crowded the circular hall, their voices a mixture of despair and anger. Above them, holographic displays showed the unstoppable advance of the Nexus Dominion's forces, system after system falling to their relentless march across the galaxy. Supreme Commander Varine of the Concordat Defense Force stood at the center, her crystalline form reflecting the red emergency lights. The Dominion has taken the Cygnus Arm. The Orion defense line has fallen. We've lost contact with the Pleiadian collective. Her voice, usually melodious like all Lumini, carried the weight of impending defeat. The chamber erupted in chaos. The Arcaxian delegate, his scaled skin darkening with stress, rose from his seat. What of the Beta Centauri defense grid? Surely our automated platforms. Destroyed. Varine cut him off. The Dominion's quantum phase weapons rendered them useless. Our best technologies, our strongest defenses, they adapt too quickly. They're not just conquering us. They're absorbing our knowledge, improving upon it, and using it against us. In the shadows of the upper tier, Ambassador Krell of the Mechanoid Consortium processed the data streams with growing concern. His artificial neural networks calculated the odds of survival, less than 2.3%. Then we have lost, he stated, his metallic voice echoing through the chamber. The Dominion's technological superiority is absolute. They have countered every strategy, defeated every weapon we've deployed. But Varine wasn't finished. Her crystalline form pulsed with a faint light, a sign of hope among her kind. There might be one option left. She gestured, and a new hologram appeared, a spiral arm at the galaxy's edge, largely unexplored by the Concordat. We've detected unusual activity in this region, a species we've only observed from afar, one that developed along a completely different technological path than ours. The humans, whispered Arcos, the ancient Meridian scholar. You can't be serious. They're barely interstellar. Their civilization is fractured, their technology primitive by our standards. They still use chemical propulsion on many of their vessels, for Creator's sake. Varine's light pulsed brighter. Yes, primitive by our measures. But they've achieved things we thought impossible with their limited resources. While we mastered quantum engineering, they excelled at improvisation. While we built automated defense systems, they focused on adaptability. They're different. And different is exactly what we need. The chamber fell silent as grainy footage played above them. Human ships performing maneuvers that defied conventional tactics, jerry-rigged solutions that shouldn't work but did, and battles where outdated human vessels somehow prevailed against superior forces through sheer ingenuity. The Dominion defeats us because they can predict us, Varine continued. They understand how we think, because we all evolved along similar technological paths. But humans are chaos incarnate. They break rules we didn't even know existed. They solve problems in ways that our most advanced AIs would never consider. Ambassador Krell's optical sensors focused on the footage. Their methods are illogical, inefficient, and yet his neural networks struggled to process the outcomes he was seeing. And yet they succeed. Varine finished for him. The Dominion's greatest strength is its ability to analyze and counter our strategies. But how do you counter an enemy whose strategies make no sense even to themselves? How do you predict a species that thrives on unpredictability? The chamber erupted in discussion again, but this time with an undercurrent of hope. The Arcaxian delegate's scales shifted to a lighter shade. Even if you're right, will they help? Why would they join a war that isn't theirs? Varine's light dimmed slightly. Because that's another thing that makes humans unique. They fight hardest not for themselves, but for others. And right now, I'm counting on that trait most of all. She raised her crystalline arm, and the hologram shifted to show a message already prepared, waiting to be sent toward Earth. We're not asking them to win this war for us. We're asking them to show us how to win it ourselves, to teach us what we've forgotten in our rush for technological perfection. That victory doesn't always go to the strongest or most advanced. Sometimes it goes to those crazy enough to try the impossible. The vote was unanimous. The message was sent, and in that moment, none of them realized they weren't just calling for military aid. They were about to fundamentally change the course of galactic civilization forever. The United Earth Defense Command Center buzzed with activity as Admiral Sarah Chen studied the alien distress signal. The holographic message from the Galactic Concordat played for the 20th time, its implications growing more staggering with each viewing. Mankind wasn't alone in the universe, and their first contact would be joining an interstellar war. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours, General Marcus Rodriguez noted, his weathered face illuminated by the holographic display. Yet they're asking us for help. Either this is a trap, or they're truly desperate. Admiral Chen's eyes never left the tactical display showing the Dominion's advance, or they see something in us that we don't see in ourselves. She zoomed in on the battle footage the Concordat had shared. Look at their ships. Beautiful, perfectly engineered. Every system optimized. Every weapon precisely calibrated. And that's exactly their problem. The command staff gathered around as Chen highlighted key points in the footage. They fight like machines, even the organic species. Perfect formation, perfect timing, textbook maneuvers. No wonder the Dominion can predict their every move. And we don't. Rodriguez asked, though his slight smile suggested he already knew the answer. Hell no, we don't, Chen laughed. We've got ships held together with patch jobs and prayer, crews that write their own rulebooks. Captains who think directly through the sun is a valid tactical approach if it means surprising the enemy. She pulled up the schematics of Earth's fleet. Unlike the sleek, uniform vessels of the Concordat, humanity's ships were a mismatched collection of designs. Some were elegant, others purely functional, and more than a few looked like they'd been cobbled together from spare parts, which, in fact, they had been. We've spent our entire history fighting ourselves, Chen continued. Every weapon we developed, we had to counter. Every strategy we created, we had to defeat. We don't have perfect ships because we learned early on that perfect ships make perfect targets. The room's main screen lit up with a new alert. The Concordat's representatives would arrive within 24 hours to formally request Earth's aid. Chen studied the faces of her command staff, seeing the same mix of excitement and apprehension she felt herself. They're expecting a miracle, Rodriguez warned. We can't give them one. No, Chen agreed. We can give them something better. We can give them chaos. The next day, the Concordat delegation entered Earth's orbit with trepidation. Supreme Commander Vereen had prepared herself for anything, but the sight that greeted her still gave her pause. Earth's orbital space was a bewildering maze of satellites, stations, and ships of every conceivable design. Some were clearly military vessels, others appeared to be civilian craft hastily converted for war. The humans had no uniform aesthetic, no standardized approach to space travel. It was, to her ordered mind, madness. The delegation's shuttle was guided to humanity's newest space station, a massive structure that somehow combined elegant solar arrays with sections that looked like they'd been welded together in someone's backyard. As they docked, Vereen's sensors detected energy signatures he couldn't even classify. Admiral Chen met them in a conference room that had, until recently, been a cargo hold. The contrast between Vereen's crystalline form and Chen's practical naval uniform couldn't have been starker. Welcome to Earth, Chen said simply. We've reviewed your situation. We'll help. Vereen's form pulsed with surprise at the lack of negotiation. Just like that. You understand you'll be facing an enemy that has defeated technologies far beyond your own. Chen's smile was warm, but held an edge of steel. Oh, we're counting on it. Your Dominion has spent years learning to counter advanced technology. Let's see how they handle the opposite problem. She led them to a vast hangar where crews were modifying Earth's ships. Vereen watched in fascination and slight horror as humans stripped away sophisticated alien systems from captured vessels and replaced them with what looked like primitive alternatives. "What are they doing?" Vereen asked, watching a team remove a quantum targeting array. "Making it better," Chen replied. "Your targeting system is perfect, which means its weaknesses are perfectly predictable. We're replacing it with something a little more human." As if to demonstrate, a nearby ship fired its newly modified weapons at a practice target. The beam didn't travel in the precise, straight line of Concordat weapons. Instead, it followed an erratic path, corkscrewing through space before hitting its mark with devastating effect. "Impossible," one of Vereen's scientists whispered. "The energy loss from such an inefficient delivery method is massive," Chen agreed. "We're losing about 40% of the weapon's potential power, but we're gaining something more valuable: unpredictability. Your sensors are calibrated to track efficient weapon paths. Good luck calculating the trajectory of a weapon that doesn't care about efficiency." Vereen's crystalline form flickered as she processed this approach. It went against everything her civilization had learned about warfare. "This is how you intend to fight, with intentionally flawed weapons." "No," Chen corrected her. "This is how we intend to win. The Dominion expects perfection. We'll give them humanity instead. Messy, inefficient, and absolutely impossible to predict. They've learned to counter your strengths. Let's see how they handle our weaknesses." As if to punctuate her words, another modified ship tested its weapons. This time, the beam split into multiple trajectories, each following its own chaotic path. None of them hit the center of the target, but every single one struck somewhere on its surface. "Welcome to human warfare, Commander," Chen said, watching Vereen's reaction. "Where the only rule is that there are no rules, and the best technology isn't always the most advanced. It's the most surprising." The Concordat delegation left Earth that day with mixed emotions. They had hoped to find powerful allies. Instead, they had found something far more interesting: a species that turned conventional wisdom on its head and seemed to thrive on it. Whether this would be enough to turn the tide of war remained to be seen, but one thing was certain: the Dominion was about to face something entirely new in the galaxy. Human ingenuity unleashed. High Admiral Mexer of the Dominion fleet watched in mounting frustration as another perfectly executed attack formation dissolved into chaos. The human ships shouldn't have been able to survive the first volley, let alone counterattack. Their technology was primitive, their ships were inferior, and yet— "Impossible," he hissed, his metallic scales bristling with anger. "They're using mining vessels as combat ships." Mining vessels. His tactical officer, Vex, studied the battlefield readouts with growing concern. "Sir, we're detecting unusual energy signatures from those mining ships. They appear to be using their excavation beams as weapons." On the main display, a converted human mining vessel demonstrated exactly that point. Its industrial cutting beam, designed to slice through asteroids, had been modified to fire in pulsing, erratic bursts. The beam's path defied prediction algorithms, corkscrewing through space to strike a Dominion cruiser from an impossible angle. "Their weapons are wasteful, imprecise," Nexer growled. "They're losing half their energy through inefficient delivery methods. This defies all tactical logic." "Yes, sir," Vex agreed, "but our shields are calibrated for precision energy weapons. These modified mining beams, they're too chaotic. Our predictive defense systems can't lock onto their attack patterns." Another alert flashed across the screen. A group of small human vessels had appeared behind their lines, seemingly out of nowhere. They were civilian transport ships, retrofitted with military gear in ways that made no engineering sense. As the Dominion fleet turned to engage them, the ships released clouds of what appeared to be space debris. "Scans show it's industrial waste," Vex reported, bewildered. "Mixed with— Sir, they're using their own communication satellites as chaff." The debris cloud played havoc with the Dominion's sophisticated sensor systems. Their targeting computers, designed to track and predict the movement of advanced warships, were overwhelmed by thousands of pieces of junk moving in deliberately irregular patterns. In the confusion, the main human fleet struck. Their ships moved in formations that no military academy would ever teach. Their weapons fired in patterns that no tactical computer could anticipate. It wasn't just chaos. It was orchestrated chaos, deliberately engineered to exploit the very precision the Dominion relied upon. Fall back to secondary positions, Nexer ordered. Recalibrate all defense systems. They can't keep this up forever. No fleet can maintain such disorganized attacks. But he was wrong. As his ships retreated, the humans demonstrated exactly why they could maintain their seemingly random assault. A Dominion destroyer scored a direct hit on one of their cruisers, tearing a massive hole in its side. By all normal military doctrine, the ship should have withdrawn for repairs. Instead, the human vessel turned its damaged section into an advantage. It vented atmosphere in controlled bursts, using the escaping gas as impromptu maneuvering thrusters. The ship spun and rolled in ways that should have torn it apart, closing distance with its attacker faster than any conventional engine could manage. "Sir," Vex's voice had lost its professional calm. The humans, they're broadcasting on open channels, to each other, in clear text. Nexer's tactical display filled with human communications. They weren't using encryption, weren't even trying to hide their orders. But the messages themselves. Remember that thing we did in the Titan games? Do that, but backwards and on fire. Nexer read in disbelief. What kind of military communication is this? The answer came in the form of another human innovation. Their ships began moving in ways that seemed to ignore formation and doctrine, yet somehow maintained a coordinated assault. Each captain appeared to be improvising, building on the random suggestions of their colleagues, creating a battle plan that emerged from chaos rather than following a prescribed strategy. The Dominion's tactical computers, programmed to detect patterns and predict enemy movements, were worse than useless. They kept trying to find logic in actions that deliberately defied it, attempting to predict the unpredictable. "Sir," Vex reported, "we're detecting more ships approaching. Human vessels, but these readings can't be right. They appear to be using their own engine cores as weapons." Nexer zoomed in on the newcomers. The human ships had modified their fusion drives to run hot, far beyond safety limits. They were literally using the threat of their own engines exploding as a weapon, creating zones that Dominion ships couldn't approach without risking radiation exposure. "This isn't warfare," Nexer muttered. "This is madness." "No, sir," Vex corrected quietly. "This is human warfare, and we're losing to it." As if to prove his point, another human transmission cut through their communications. "Hey, remember that crazy idea about using tractor beams in reverse? Let's try it now." Nexer watched in horror as human ships began using repurposed cargo handling equipment to push instead of pull, creating gravitational distortions that played havoc with his fleet's carefully plotted movement patterns. The battle wasn't just turning, it had already turned. The Dominion's greatest strength, its technological superiority, had been transformed into a weakness. Every sophisticated system they possessed was being confounded by human unpredictability, every tactical advantage nullified by strategies that no sane military would ever conceive. As his fleet began its withdrawal, Nexer finally understood. The humans weren't fighting to match the Dominion's level of advancement. They were dragging the Dominion down to fight on their terms, in the chaos where they thrived. The galaxy was about to learn a harsh lesson. Sometimes the most dangerous enemy isn't the one with the best technology, but the one who knows how to turn their limitations into strengths. Supreme Commander Vereen stood in Earth's orbital command center, watching as Concordat engineers worked alongside humans to modify their fleet. 3 months had passed since humanity joined the war, and the change in her forces was almost unrecognizable. Gone was the pristine uniformity of their ships, replaced by a controlled chaos that would have horrified her just a few months ago. "Your people learned quickly," Admiral Chen observed, joining her at the viewport. Below them, A Lumini cruiser was being fitted with what the humans called controlled instability drives, engines deliberately designed to produce erratic power fluctuations that confused enemy targeting systems. "We had no choice," Vereen replied, her crystalline form pulsing with mixed emotions. "The Dominion had pushed us to the brink of extinction. Your methods, they're saving us, even if they pain us to implement." Chen watched as a team of human engineers taught their alien counterparts the art of creative improvisation, a concept that had been alien to the Concordet's rigid engineering principles. "You're not just copying our technology," she noted. "You're beginning to think like us." The evidence was everywhere. Concordat ships now moved in unpredictable patterns, their crews learning to trust instinct over pure calculation. Species that had relied on automated systems for centuries were rediscovering the value of human intuition and manual control. A holographic display activated, showing the latest battle reports. The Dominion's advance had not only been halted but pushed back in several sectors. Yet the cost was visible in the growing lists of casualties and lost ships. "We're winning," Vereen said softly, "but the price is high." Chen finished. "It always is, but you're paying it differently now." She gestured to a nearby repair bay, where a Meridian battleship was undergoing repairs. Instead of replacing damaged sections with exact duplicates, the engineers were adapting and improving, learning from each battle's lessons. The ship would emerge stronger, but more importantly, it would emerge different. "The Dominion still doesn't understand," Chen continued. "They see our victories as flukes, our strategies as desperate gambles. They're waiting for us to run out of tricks, not realizing that improvisation isn't about having a finite set of tactics. It's about creating new solutions for each challenge." A new alert drew their attention. On the main screen, footage showed a mixed group of human and Concordat ships engaging a Dominion fleet. The alien ships moved with a newfound unpredictability, while their human allies pushed the boundaries of what their technology could do. But what truly caught Vereen's attention was how they worked together. Human ingenuity combined with Concordat technology in ways neither side had imagined possible. The Lumini vessel used its quantum fields to enhance the effectiveness of improvised human weapons. Arcaxian ships, once prized for their precise formation flying, now executed chaotic maneuvers that seemed to defy physics. "We're not just teaching them to fight," Chen mused, watching the battle unfold. "We're teaching them to adapt, to evolve. Each victory comes not from superior firepower, but from finding new ways to use what we have." The price of this evolution was evident in the scars their ships bore, in the lists of the fallen that grew longer with each engagement. But there was something else growing too, a resilience that went beyond mere survival. The Concordat species were learning that perfection wasn't always the answer, that sometimes the best solution was the one nobody saw coming. "Your people feared chaos," Chen said, turning to Vereen. "Now you're learning to embrace it, to use it. That's the real victory here." Vereen's crystalline form shimmered with understanding. "We thought we were asking you to help us win a war. Instead, you're teaching us to win all the wars to come." The command center hummed with activity as reports continued to flow in. More Dominion fleets were approaching, each larger than the last. But now, instead of fear, the news was met with determination. Every defeat taught them something new. Every victory showed them another possibility. "They still have superior technology," Vereen noted, watching the tactical displays. "Superior numbers, superior resources." Chen smiled. "And we have something better. The ability to do the impossible because nobody told us it was impossible. Your people are learning that now, and it's changing everything." A new transmission caught their attention. Another Dominion fleet had been defeated, this time by a combined force using tactics that would have been unthinkable months ago. The victory had been costly, but it carried a message that was spreading across the galaxy. The perfect could be defeated by the unpredictable. "The Dominion thinks they're fighting a war of technology," Chen said, watching the reports of their latest victory. "They don't realize they're fighting a war of ideas, and ideas, once spread, can never be truly defeated. Around them, the combined forces of humanity and the Concordat continued their work, each day bringing new innovations, new adaptations, new ways of thinking about problems that had once seemed insurmountable. The price of victory was high, but it was buying something more valuable than mere survival. It was buying evolution. The Dominion's Supreme Command gathered in their central fortress, a massive space station that had once seemed impregnable. Now, as combined fleets of human and Concordat forces approached from multiple vectors, that certainty was crumbling. High Admiral Nexer stood before the tactical display, watching as the enemy ships moved in patterns that still defied prediction. "Look at them," he growled. "Their formations make no sense. Their attack vectors are illogical. Their very existence mocks everything we believed about warfare." The humans had changed everything, not just through their own actions, but through what they had taught others. The once predictable Concordat forces now moved with the same controlled chaos as their human allies. Every attempt to adapt to their tactics failed because there was no pattern to adapt to. Admiral Chen's voice cut through their communications, broadcasted on all frequencies. "This is your final warning. Surrender, and we guarantee fair treatment under galactic law." The Dominion commanders laughed, but there was an edge of uncertainty to it. They had lost half their territory in the past month alone, not to superior technology or overwhelming force, but to strategies they couldn't counter because they couldn't understand them. "They're using civilian ships as warships," one commander reported incredulously. "Mining vessels, cargo haulers, even passenger liners, all modified for combat in ways that shouldn't work." Nexer watched as the enemy fleet began its approach. The humans led the charge, their retrofitted vessels moving in ways that violated every principle of space combat. Behind them came the Concordat ships, once proud examples of technological perfection, now bearing the scars and modifications that marked them as followers of humanity's chaotic doctrine. "Their ships are inferior," Nexer insisted. "Their weapons are inefficient. Their tactics are winning." His tactical officer finished quietly. The battle that followed would be studied for centuries to come. The Dominion's fortress, bristling with the most advanced weapons in the galaxy, found itself under attack by forces that turned its very sophistication against it. Human ships deliberately triggered its automated defense systems, causing them to waste energy on phantom targets. Concordat vessels, once easily predicted by Dominion computers, now moved in patterns that caused the targeting systems to crash. But it wasn't just chaos for chaos's sake. There was a method to the madness, a strategy born from humanity's long history of turning disadvantages into strengths. Every failed prediction by the Dominion's computers created an opening. Every attempt to find patterns in the unpredictable left them vulnerable to the next innovation. Supreme Commander Vereen, her crystalline form now bearing battle scars that she wore with pride, coordinated with Admiral Chen from their joint command ship. "The fortress's shields are adapting," she reported. "They're learning from each attack." Chen smiled. "Good. That means they're about to make the same mistake everyone makes, trying to perfect their defenses against imperfect attacks." As if on cue, the human fleet launched what appeared to be a desperate, disorganized assault on the fortress's main shield generator. The Dominion's defenses responded perfectly, adjusting to counter every aspect of the attack. Their shield harmonics shifted to maximum efficiency, their point defense systems achieved optimal coverage. And that's exactly what the attackers had wanted. "Now," Chen ordered. A squadron of ships that had been running dark suddenly powered up. They were Concordat vessels, but not as the Dominion knew them. Their quantum weapons had been modified with human innovations, creating energy signatures that no defense system could recognize. The fortress's shields, calibrated for maximum efficiency against known weapons, might as well have been non-existent. The combined fleet pressed their advantage. Human ingenuity merged with Concordat technology in ways that created something entirely new. Ships that should have been crippled by damage continued fighting, their crews adapting and improvising with every passing moment. Weapons that should have failed found their targets through paths that no tactical computer could have predicted. High Admiral Nexar watched as his impregnable fortress began to fall. "How?" he demanded. "How can they keep fighting like this? There's no logic to it. No pattern. No. That's exactly why we're winning." Chen's voice cut through again. "You built your empire on the assumption that warfare could be perfected. We knew better. We knew that the only perfect strategy is the ability to keep creating new ones." The fortress's defenses continued to crumble. The Dominion's perfectly coordinated counterattacks fell apart in the face of responses that no simulation could have predicted. Their sophisticated targeting systems, designed to find patterns in enemy movements, were worse than useless against ships that deliberately avoided patterns. In the end, it wasn't superior technology or overwhelming force that decided the battle. It was the simple fact that the Dominion couldn't adapt to an enemy that made adaptation itself their primary weapon. As the fortress fell and the Dominion's surrender was transmitted across the galaxy, Supreme Commander Varian turned to Admiral Chen. "We won't go back," she said. "The galaxy won't return to what it was." "No," Chen agreed. "You've all learned something more valuable than perfect technology or unbeatable weapons. You've learned to embrace uncertainty, to find strength in adaptation rather than perfection." The legacy of humanity's intervention would reshape galactic civilization. The Concordat species had learned that progress didn't always mean moving toward perfection. Sometimes it meant learning to thrive in imperfection, to find solutions in chaos, to see limitations not as weaknesses, but as opportunities for innovation. As the combined fleet secured their victory, messages poured in from across the galaxy. Species that had lived in fear of the Dominion's technological superiority were rising up, inspired by the proof that even the most advanced enemy could be defeated by those willing to think differently. The war was over, but its impact was just beginning. Humanity had given the galaxy more than victory. They had given it a new way of thinking, a new way of solving problems, a new way of facing challenges. In doing so, they had ensured that no force, no matter how powerful, could ever again threaten the galaxy by relying on predictability and perfection. The age of rigid perfection was over. The age of endless adaptation had begun.